Welcome to the Nordic Venture Show, your speed date with the hottest Nordic innovations and ventures. In this episode, our venture date is with Terrafame, battery chemicals and sustainable operations.
All right, so today we're diving deep into Terrafame.
Okay.
A Finnish company that's, making some pretty big moves in the electric vehicle battery supply chain.
Interesting.
Yeah, and we're really focusing on information directly from their website.
Oh, okay.
So we can kind of get a sense of what they're saying about themselves,
Right.
where their priorities are.
Yeah.
And I think our mission today is really to try to understand, Terrafame's business, like really, the nuts and bolts, but also to dig into, they're talking a lot about sustainability.
Right.
And, the world of green transportation is moving so fast.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, becoming more and more crucial to actually understand, where these materials are coming from, the
Right.
origins of how we're powering this green transition.
Right.
And Terrafame is really, putting themselves out there
Yeah.
as a key player in this, especially on the European landscape.
So at the core of it, they're producing battery chemicals,
Okay.
nickel and cobalt sulphates.
That's right. Essential for EV batteries.
Exactly. And they're talking about producing enough to supply around 1 million electric cars annually.
Wow, that's a pretty big scale.
Yeah, it's a huge scale.
Yeah.
And beyond that, they're also producing zinc and copper sulfides and ammonium sulfate.
So it's a broader operation than just batteries, it sounds like?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they've got their, their hands in a few different pots.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that the battery piece is really, a major focus for them.
Yeah, and especially, when you think about the European context,
Right.
it's interesting because they have the largest nickel reserves in Europe,
Wow.
and they operate one of the world's largest battery chemical plants.
Really?
So this isn't just about one company in Finland.
Right.
This is potentially, a really important piece of Europe's strategy for that green transition,
Exactly.
aiming for more, security in its supply of these critical raw materials.
Yeah, if you've ever wondered, where do these batteries come from?
Right.
What's in these electric car batteries?
Yeah.
And, are they sourcing these things sustainably?
Mm-hmm.
We're diving deep into a company that is trying to be a leader in this.
Absolutely.
And one of the first things that jumps out from their website is
Yeah.
this really strong emphasis on sustainability.
From the get-go.
Their slogan is green transport starts here.
That's a bold
It's
statement.
a very bold statement.
Yeah.
And they back it up by saying they have the lowest carbon footprint on the market for their battery chemicals. And they're attributing that to their highly energy-efficient bioleaching method.
Yeah, it seems like that's a key differentiator for them.
Yeah, bioleaching.
Bioleaching, what is that?
I know, right? It sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
So they describe it as their, unique method for producing nickel sulfate.
Okay.
And they say it results in a carbon footprint that's 60% lower than the industry average.
60% lower.
60%. That's a huge amount.
That's a massive difference. Yeah.
So this bioleaching process sounds like it's not just, central to their sustainability story, but it's also a major competitive advantage.
Absolutely, because if you think about it, that 60% reduction
Yeah.
could potentially lower the overall carbon footprint of an EV battery's production by a noticeable percentage.
Right.
So that's making a tangible difference
Wow.
in the life cycle analysis of these batteries.
So how does this bioleaching thing actually work?
So instead of using, high temperature smelting, which is, very energy intensive,
Right.
bioleaching actually uses microorganisms to extract the metals from the ore.
It's like alchemy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, harnessing the power of nature.
Yeah.
And this gentler process really contributes to the lower energy consumption
Yeah.
and thus the reduced carbon footprint.
So it's a win-win.
Exactly. And, this kind of innovation is becoming increasingly important for companies further down the supply chain.
Oh, interesting.
Who are also trying to minimize their environmental impact.
Right.
It allows them to then credibly claim a more sustainable product.
And it's not just about their own production methods.
Right.
They talk a lot about sustainable supply chain.
Yeah, they're emphasizing that it's not just about what happens within their facilities.
Right. They require responsibility from ourselves and our partners throughout the chain, from the mine all the way to the customer.
Wow, that's a pretty comprehensive commitment.
It is. And
Yeah.
they have this 2020 to 2024 sustainability program
Okay.
that's focusing on themes that are important to their stakeholders.
I think what's really fascinating here is this recognition that sustainability isn't an isolated effort.
Yeah.
It really requires collaboration and this shared responsibility across the entire value chain.
Right.
And by setting these expectations for their partners, they're trying to create this ripple effect
Right.
and ensure that their commitments aren't being undermined by others in the process.
So they're listing all these external frameworks that they align with.
Oh, wow.
The UN Global Compact,
Yeah.
the ILO Declaration, the UN Sustainable Development Goals,
Okay.
the Towards Sustainable Mining Standard, which is, a framework specifically for mining, the Finnish Corporate Governance Code, and then their own internal policies.
So it seems like they're really trying to adhere to a wide range of internationally recognized standards and best practices.
Exactly. And I think it really, demonstrates that they're trying to show that this isn't just some internal marketing thing.
Yeah.
That they're really trying to align with these broader global norms and expectations.
And especially that TSM standard, I think, is a really strong signal within the mining sector because it specifically indicates, a commitment to environmental and social responsibility.
Yeah, and they really emphasize that this is integrated into their daily operations.
Okay, so it's not just a separate department or a separate initiative.
No, they say it covers safety, environment, stakeholders, good governance. And they talk about this collective responsibility of all personnel and partners.
And I think that's really crucial, right? Because for sustainability to be truly effective, it needs to be embedded in the company culture and embraced by everyone, not just a select few. So that mention of collective responsibility suggests they are trying to foster that widespread commitment.
Let's look a little bit deeper into their sustainability program goals.
Okay.
Under environmental responsibility, they're talking about combating climate change with their EV clients. They're aiming for carbon neutrality in their production by 2039.
Okay.
Efficiently using production side streams.
Right.
And minimizing emissions to water bodies.
So those are some pretty concrete targets.
They are.
I mean, setting these clear, measurable goals is essential for accountability.
Right.
And that target of carbon neutrality by 2039 is ambitious,
Yeah.
but it provides a long-term vision. And focusing on side stream utilization and minimizing water emissions,
Right.
that also shows a commitment to reducing their footprint beyond just carbon emissions.
Exactly. And then under social responsibility,
Okay.
they highlight ensuring a safe workplace for their employees and partners.
Yeah.
Respecting human and labor rights and expecting the same from their partners, which, ties back to the sustainable supply chain piece.
Absolutely.
Continuous personnel development and active stakeholder dialogue.
So these social responsibility goals really address those crucial aspects of ethical and sustainable business practices.
Right.
And again, that emphasis on safety and human rights extending to their partners really reinforces this idea of shared responsibility that we keep coming back to. And investing in personnel development also contributes to long-term sustainability by ensuring you have a skilled and engaged workforce.
And finally, good governance. They emphasize transparent operations, ensuring compliance, building a strong ethical culture, and basing their operations on continuous improvement and data-driven decisions.
So it really sounds like they're trying to build this foundation of trust and accountability.
Exactly. And good governance is really the bedrock of any sustainable organization.
Absolutely.
Transparency, compliance, a strong ethical culture.
Yeah.
All these things help prevent risks and build trust with stakeholders.
And that commitment to continuous improvement and data-driven decisions really suggests a willingness to learn and adapt, their practices over time.
So it's interesting to see, they're doing all of this, and then we have some recent news.
Oh, okay.
As of March 25th, 2025, their Kalmasapi ore deposit has been granted strategic project status under the EU's Critical Raw Materials Act.
That sounds pretty significant.
It's huge. And, given Europe's push for EV adoption, having the largest nickel reserves within its borders.
Yeah.
And now this strategic project status.
I mean, it seems like Terrafame is becoming a really crucial player.
Yeah.
How does this impact Europe's reliance on other regions for these critical materials?
I think it's very significant. I think this designation by the EU really underscores how important Terrafame's project is to this broader European strategy for securing access to those raw materials needed for this green transition, and particularly for electric vehicle batteries.
Right.
So it likely comes with certain advantages in terms of permitting and access to funding, but it really signifies that strong recognition from the EU.
Yeah.
And it's a move towards greater self-sufficiency.
Yeah, regional self-sufficiency.
Exactly. And then on the same day, they announced the publication of their financial review for 2024.
Oh, okay.
Which I think really indicates a commitment to financial transparency, allowing stakeholders to see, how they're performing economically.
Financial transparency is definitely a key element of good governance.
It is.
And publishing the review really allows investors and other stakeholders to assess the company's financial health and its performance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there were also some changes mentioned in their board of directors.
Okay.
Following their annual general meeting.
And board changes, they can sometimes signal new strategic directions.
Right, or reinforcement of existing ones.
Yeah, so it's something that stakeholders will likely be paying close attention to.
Exactly.
As they consider the company's future trajectory.
Now, getting back to their core offering.
Yeah.
They talk about this added value that they bring to their customers.
Okay.
Especially the ones who are looking for, this responsible European sourcing. So things like long-term cooperation.
Right.
That traceable and sustainable supply chain that we've been talking about.
Yes.
Laboratory services.
Okay.
And even logistics to ensure product purity.
So it seems like they're really trying to be more than just a supplier of raw materials.
Exactly.
They're aiming to be a real partner.
Yeah, they're positioning themselves as a strategic partner.
Yeah.
Offering not just the materials, but, the assurances of responsible sourcing.
Right.
And the support to ensure a smooth and reliable supply chain.
And this is especially appealing to customers who are facing increasing scrutiny regarding the environmental and social impact of their products.
Right.
And they're looking for reliable, ethically sourced materials.
Especially European materials. Yeah. And finally, they emphasize their commitment to continuous development and challenging conventional ways of thinking.
Oh, interesting.
As a key source of their competitive advantage.
It sounds like they're not content to just stick with the status quo.
No, they're not.
They're looking towards future innovation.
Yeah.
In this rapidly evolving sector.
And that's vital in a field like this.
Absolutely.
Because battery technology and sustainable production is changing so fast.
Constantly evolving, yeah.
Yeah, so this commitment to innovation allows them to potentially reduce their environmental footprint further.
Right.
Improve efficiency.
Yeah.
And stay ahead of the competition.
In what is becoming an increasingly critical industry.
So for you, the listener,
yeah,
what are the key takeaways here?
Yeah, what have we learned?
I think it's pretty clear that their core focus is on producing those battery chemicals,
right.
nickel and cobalt sulphates, but with a really big emphasis on achieving that low carbon footprint through bioleaching.
And they're not just talking about sustainability, they're actually taking a comprehensive approach.
Right.
That touches on environmental and social and good governance aspects.
Yeah.
And they're really trying to embed this throughout their operations and even their supply chain.
Yeah, and I think their strategic position within Europe, especially with this recent designation from the EU,
right,
really kind of underscores their growing importance in this landscape of electric vehicles.
Yeah, they're presenting a model where sustainability is not just an add-on.
Yeah.
It's a core part of their business strategy.
Yeah.
And a key differentiator in the market.
And their commitment to those external frameworks.
Yeah.
And their detailed sustainability program really kind of gives us a roadmap.
Right. It shows their ambition.
Yeah.
And that they understand that long-term success is really intertwined with responsible practices.
So here's something to think about.
Okay.
As the demand for electric vehicles grows.
Yeah, it's only going to continue to grow.
The way we source and produce these battery materials is going to become so critical.
Absolutely.
And Terrafame presents one model for how this can be done.
Yeah.
With this real emphasis on sustainability from the start.
Right.
Using innovative technologies and this comprehensive framework.
So what role do you think companies like Terrafame will ultimately play in shaping the future of green transportation?
Especially in terms of, these regional supply chains.
Yeah.
And reducing reliance on, global volatility.
That's a big question.
It is a huge question.
And it's not just about what companies are doing. It's also about, what other factors should consumers and policymakers be considering.
Exactly, as we navigate this shift towards electric mobility.
That's crucial, understanding the origins and the sustainability credentials of the materials that are powering our increasingly electrified world.
Yeah.
That's essential for ensuring a truly green transition.
Right.
It encourages us to look beyond just those tailpipe emissions and consider that entire life cycle impact.
Exactly.
As well as the strategic implications of, where these vital resources are sourced and processed.
If you want to explore this further, I would encourage you to check out the EU's Critical Raw Materials Act.
Yeah.
Get a sense of that broader context.
Right, the geopolitical factors at play.
Exactly, or even, just delve deeper into the challenges and opportunities in creating this truly sustainable and resilient battery production industry.
Absolutely.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Thanks for listening to the Nordic Venture Show. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more stories of innovation from the Nordics.